What's going on, everyone? So, we are 2 days away from the NBA trade deadline, time of recording this video at least, and there are all kinds of little reports going around on various teams as we start approaching and things start getting ramped up. There are a couple big names that may have potentially just became available that teams may be looking to acquire and could make an impact and really could change the tides for some of these teams. And then there's some little moves for contenders, things like that. But let's go over some of the news. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions, so let me know down in the comments below. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, start with the Mavs and the Bucks, right? The Dallas Mavericks and the Milwaukee Bucks have had talks about swapping Bobby Portis and Grant Williams. Now, personally, I don't really see it from a Milwaukee standpoint, right? I mean, now their contracts are similar. Williams making a little more, but Portis, I just think he's more versatile. He makes a lot of sense for Milwaukee, like what he does. I mean, I guess Grant Williams gives you a little more stockiness, a little more toughness, I guess. But it's not like Bobby Portis is like some slouch in that regard. Like, I get it from a Dallas standpoint, right? Like, if you could just swap Grant Williams for Bobby Portis, I would do that all day. But I don't really see it for the Bucks. Now, based on the reports, it looks like that the Milwaukee Bucks want more than just Grant Williams, right? They're willing to maybe potentially do the trade, do the swap, but they don't want to just, we're just going to do a one-for-one swap. They want assets or pieces or another player. They're trying to kind of round out their roster more and kind of get some upgrades in depth. So that would be kind of interesting. But from a Mavs, to me, it's just like, what do you have to give up? Right? Because look, Bobby Portis, solid production, especially off the bench, 28 years old, so still got plenty of room, plenty of growth, plenty of years left. He's averaging just under 13 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, shooting 50% from the field. Pretty good, right? I mean, that would be a huge, huge upgrade for them. Considering, Grant Williams, I'm not really sold on Grant Williams personally. I'm not really big on him with Dallas. I didn't really understand why they went after him to begin with from Boston. Yeah, he's a solid player. I'm not saying he's bad, but it's just I didn't think that was what Dallas needed, right? Like, that was kind of like the big acquisition for them. And it was just like, what is he, like, how is he going to really round out this roster for you? Where Bobby Portis, I just think, Bobby's more versatile. Run him in the 5, run him in the 4, right? He can make plays, he can hit shots, he can do a little bit of everything. Shooting better, he's averaging more points, rebounds, everything, even in a backup role. Grant Williams is slightly younger, 25. But Portis he's not as bulky and stocky, but he's longer. I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for me. I'd be a little surprised if something like this happened. But again, it just depends on what Dallas has to give up. Moving on. DeMar Rosen may end up being available. So, based on reports, DeMar Rosen and the Chicago Bulls contract extensions have halted, and they haven't been able to come to an agreement. DeMar Rosen has said twice publicly that he wants to re-sign with Chicago. Now, of course, could just be the company man answer. Right? You're just saying the things just to kind of keep people happy, right? You don't want to, you're not going to come out and be like, oh, this team's trash, get me out of here, right? Especially when you're a free agent. You kind of want to look good for other teams. But originally, the Chicago Bulls wanted to keep him, right? You heard the owner say, we want to re-sign DeMar. So it looked like all sides wanted to do that. Zach LaVine, that was the big target. That was who they were trying to move. And the plan originally for Chicago was, okay, let's trade Zach LaVine. Whatever pieces and players we get, we'll take those, see how it looks with this roster, and then make our decision. Are we trading DeMar DeRozan? Are we trading Alex Caruso? Are we trading Vu? Like, what are we doing here, right? But Zach LaVine being out for the season threw a complete monkey wrench into everything. So now they're going to have to kind of just figure it out. And they're not winning anything. They're not. They should have tore this thing down last year. But instead, they wanted to re-sign Vu, and they didn't want to trade DeMar and LaVine and all these guys. And it's just like, Zach LaVine played 77 games last year. He was the healthiest he's been. Right? Like, if you were ever going to trade these guys, last year would have been the time to trade for them. I mean, you had teams like the Lakers who were desperate. You probably could have gotten the farm for them for a Zach LaVine or DeMar Rosen. You had other teams that would have been very interested in DeMar Rosen. The Knicks probably would have went after DeMar Rosen. Maybe the Heat. Maybe those teams would have even went after DeMar. So it just, now it's like, what are you going to get? He's an expiring contract. He can kind of dictate and control where he wants to go based on reports. Supposedly, DeMar Rosen is interested in the Knicks. So how much of that is true? I've only seen one report that says that. So I don't know how true that is, or if it's just kind of an optimistic thing. Like, hey, I'm a Knicks fan and I want him to go to the Knicks type thing. But look, he's 34 years old. It's expiring contract. And although I think he's still an incredible player, and I do think he makes a lot of sense, and for a lot of teams, right? But what is the cost? What is Chicago going to be willing to take to let him go? Now, you could argue, hey, man, Chicago's better to get anything than nothing for DeMar DeRozan, but Chicago hasn't made the best decisions the last few years when it comes to free agencies and just decision-making for the roster and stuff like that. So, yes, if you could get a first or even a couple seconds and a quality player or two that makes sense for your future, then I think you should do it. But will Chicago do it? That's a real question. So we'll see where he ends up. I do think he is a guy that could still have multiple years of just high quality. He's been Mr. Reliable. He plays year in and year out, game in and game out. The guy averages like 75 games a season played. So he's a guy that is very dependable. And I do think his game will age like wine, right? Like, he's a guy he's not reliant on his athleticism, his explosiveness, things like that. He's very crafty, very methodical at getting to his points, getting to his spots. I think he's a guy that in the right situation could really thrive and really help a contending team. Next up is Kyrie Irving. So there was a report from Dallas News that came out that, again, this is from the Dallas side of things, that there is growing belief that the Dallas Mavericks don't believe that they can win with Kyrie and Luka, and that they've had, at this point, a full season's worth of a look, and it just hasn't gone well. Once again, they're a play-in team. They, at times, very brief times, but at times have looked very good. They've looked very talented. They've looked like, oh, maybe there's something there. But there's a lot of questions about Luka playing alongside another star like Kyrie. And, Kyrie, he's only played like 5 more games than he's missed this year. So that's a real problem too. They just gave him a new contract. He's making just under $38 million this year. Then it goes to 40. Then it goes to 42. So I could see it. Like, is Kyrie the guy you're looking as the future? Is he the guy that you're looking at and going, man, Kyrie, Luka, those are the two guys that, if we just get, a piece or two, I just don't see that. I don't. And look, I didn't think it made a ton of sense. To me, it felt like a move of desperation, right? It felt like a team that were believing the murmurs that Luka's getting antsy, and thought like, okay, well, let's go get Kyrie Irving, where I think that they should have just stayed patient, stayed the course, kept the cap space, and waited for the right play. They didn't have to trade a ton to get Kyrie, so I don't think it's something that is a problem. But what are they going to get back for him? Who's trading for him? Now, obviously, the easy answer is the Lakers. And I'm a Laker fan, and I would love to have Kyrie Irving on the Lakers. But would the Lakers do it at this point with all with just the injuries this season and the amount of games he's played, and what does Dallas want and is asking to get in return for Kyrie Irving? Yeah, things like that. There's a lot to it. It's not as just straightforward. And the problem is, if you're Dallas, the Lakers are probably going to be the only team that's actually going to want him and willing to trade something for him. So if you're Dallas, that's a tough spot to be at. Now, there are talks that if the Lakers and Dallas do a trade for Kyrie Irving, it would be more likely D'Lo and Rui, because Dallas really wants a sizable kind of two-way power forward, like a true power forward, which Rui is, and then, that secondary playmaker to take pressure off of Luka, as well as a guy that's shooting, 40+% from three, can go off on any given night and just play off ball. So that does make some sense for them, but it's just a tough spot to be in. Now, at least at the time of recording this video, there's not a ton of reports on this yet. I mean, it's spreading like wildfire right now, but we'll see if some more, credible people. I do think it's interesting that it came out of Dallas, but we'll see. Time will tell. Kyrie getting traded, I would take with a grain of salt. It's one of those things, I'll believe it when I see it, personally. But moving on to some of the lesser trades, this one's kind of a little more impactful. Detroit still wants veteran guys, and they are interested in trading for Tobias Harris, which I don't know what Detroit is doing. I really don't. Detroit doesn't want to trade Bojan Bogdanovic, and they don't want to trade Alec Burks. Why? You're not doing anything this year. You're not. I understand you want some vets. Get them in the offseason. There will be plenty of, every year there's plenty of vets that you could go get, even on the cheap in the offseason. And what you should be doing is stockpiling as many assets as you can to maybe go make a real trade at some point. Or maybe go make a real move at some point. Right? It's just, you want to go trade 42 to go acquire a guy that's making $42 million and an expiring contract for what? Look, I like Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is a very good player. I think he's making too much money, but he also is, again, an expiring contract. I think he's a guy that could really help and make an impact on the right team, but I don't understand what Detroit's thought process is. They were interested in trading for Zach LaVine, and it's just, why? Why? Trade Bogdanovic, trade Alec Burks, get some assets for them. You'll probably get a first for Bojan, you'll probably get a couple seconds for Burks, or maybe you get a young player or two. You're the worst team in the league by far. Embrace it this year, and then try to regroup in the offseason. It's all you're going to do is just ruin your chances of anything good happening and maybe going and get another player or even a top draft pick that even if you want to do a trade, well, you'd have that top draft pick to do that. I don't get it. I just don't. But anyway, they want Tobias Harris. Next up, DeLon Wright. The Milwaukee Bucks are trying to just get any type of reliable depth. Don't really get this move, right? Okay, sure, I guess. How much of an upgrade is over campaign? To me, it's just kind of all right, if this happens, it's a very small, minimal move. But look, Milwaukee's in a position where they don't have a ton of stuff. They don't have a ton of options. They don't have a ton of flexibility to do a bunch of things. So I get it in that regard. And lastly, PJ Washington. So PJ Washington has several suitors. He's believed to be very obtainable. There's even talks about him maybe potentially being bought out if he's not traded this year. Charlotte was reluctant to give him a new contract regardless. And there were talks about them just kind of letting him go. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Right? I mean, he's coming off the bench now. He's kind of like that in-between forward. Right? He's not really a 3. He's more of a 4. He is good. He is a good player and could really impact in the right role, the right position with the right team. Still very young and has plenty of upside and potential. I just think he needs to go to the right environment. The Knicks are reportedly very interested in PJ Washington and may actually do what they can to go trade for him. With the absence of Julius Randle, it kind of makes sense, right? Go kind of bolster your 4 and kind of go get somebody until he comes back. And then when he does come back, you can kind of move Washington to the bench. So we'll see how that goes, but just some things to kind of keep an eye on, keep a lookout. We'll see how this all plays out. But anyway, as always, again, this is a discussion. Pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Any of these names really pop out? I'm sure that there will be more. Get ready for a bunch of videos as we move forward, as the season progresses, or this the next 2 days progress. But anyone that really stands out, anybody that you really want on your team or respective teams, whatever. Again, let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Now subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all.